Okay, we are back, and I'm ready to do some more ranting. If I remember correctly, and the Joe in the booth has told me that you were just ranting on social programs, and he was talking about the parents and pointing out how there's so many parents that seem to just be taking and taking and placing this burden or the onus upon their own children. And I'm not sure if they can fathom and they understand, because I believe that they bought into this idea that they're entitled. And so I wonder at what point, and I hopefully it's soon, that these parents start recognizing the fact that they are basically consigning their children to enslavement. Because when debt gets so high, when our national debt gets to such a point, because if you look at our unfunded liabilities, if you look at where the majority of the money is going, those social programs are three-fourths of what we spend in our current budget is unconstitutional and social spending. And if you read my book, you can actually get into why those things are unconstitutional, because they never amended the Constitution for those roles, responsibilities, or powers. Now, let me make this clear. I am not advocating that we actually revolt. The process that the framers gave us was the Republic, and the Republic being able to coalesce and hold accountable in this contract. It's basic contract law. But moving back to this indolence and the parents, I think at what point will they actually bear maybe the shame in placing such a burden and destroying such a great opportunity that they had? And I think of the other parents that take on two jobs just so they can send their children to school and make sure that they have a better education with college and so forth, so that they don't have to sacrifice for their children. And hopefully, and actually those are the parents that are instilling that quality education and that quality preparation that all children need to become productive members of society. On the flip side, I'm wondering at what point the kids are going to be so upset at what their parents have done when there's no longer the cash cow to feed the next or the third or the fifth or the seventh generation of welfare as it goes. And this isn't necessarily a racial issue. This is a systemic cultural problem in America. And I don't mean cultural as in ethnic, race, and those types of cultural. It is our culture, and it is what our politicians have basically hooked too many good Americans into believing, oh, you know what, it's okay, you're down on your luck, we're going to put you on this, and then it makes it impossible for you to get off. I remember there's been several cases, and just lately in the news, there was a lady in Ohio, she needed to go to work and make $80,000 a year just to come to an even keel to what she was receiving through all the different benefit programs. And again, that's immoral. But at what point are the kids today going to start waking up and saying, hey, shouldn't you be working? Or better yet, really have a resentment towards their parents and the future generations that led ahead of them that created this system and now has taken away their liberties and has taken away their opportunities that we all squandered. It's time to start acting now. And I believe that the youth are actually getting to that point. Millennials are finally waking up when they realize that the jobs just aren't going to be there unless we open up the free market and we start opening up all the opportunities and getting away from the social sciences and the social engineering, and instead of the equality of pay, the equal opportunity of access to making pay and to earn your merit on what is due. The time has come when we all start actually getting an honest day's wage for an honest day's work. There are many ways, and like I said, I do not want to advocate that we actually pick up guns and revolt, but there's many misguided ways that we can actually push defiance or resistance against the government. And I call them misguided because they're ineffective. The empirical data has proven very few times have we actually been able to successfully put a resistance up to where we've made changes and have amended the Constitution, such as the Civil Rights Act. If you look at some of these things like the Occupy, the 9/12, or the marches in D.C., such as the Obamacare, the stop of the IRS heavy-handed tactics marches that some of these conservative entertainers have called and rallied for. How has that helped? It doesn't help. And as a matter of fact, everybody that spends all this money and takes all this effort, we've never gained anything. As a matter of fact, the only time we've actually gained things is when, actually, we haven't gained. The federal government gains because they believe they're responding and they take more controls and take more liberties. And so some of those things might be these social programs. People start marching on DC, and they seem to be sympathetic towards, in expanding or innovating on these social programs. And so if you look at how we constantly have grabbed liberties, and it doesn't matter whether it's on the Democratic or the Republican side, social programs for the Democratic, more rigorous controls. I mean, I don't think that there's a Republican that doesn't want to see somebody manage, control, or have overall powers, such as McCain's defense bill, where they can start detaining Americans for indefinite amount of time. It's almost like suspending habeas corpus. And Lincoln did that, and that was a violation of the Constitution. And I can't believe that we keep on re-electing these people like Harry Reid. And the fact that if you look at how much money he poured into his campaign, it's not like his constituents put him in. And he wants to actually silence, just this week, Harry Reid wants to silence corporations and groups and PACs and so forth from contributing, when he was a benefactor of all sorts of money going across his state line when he's supposed to be representing his state, and now he's beholden to all of these PACs that he received and the donors that they get that actually filter across these state lines. It's just hypocrisy. And I'm hoping Nevada and the rest of the states are learning their lesson, that you better make sure that your senators that are going to Washington to represent you are actually representing you. But we have to stop using these, I want to call them misguided attempts of defiance. What we need to do is start marching and protesting at your capital steps of your states. California, it's Sacramento. Washington State, it's Olympia. Get down there and start telling your legislatures to protect you from this federal tyranny. There's no reason why you have to take this. And as a matter of fact, the one entity that has far more power than your march on DC or any contribution are your legislatures, and that's why you need to start purging through them. And so when you really look at the solutions, and like I started off talking about, how Doug kind of after we debated and we say we argued and pulled and tugged and so forth, I think he actually saw the merit that, and he admits that the Constitution is a contract. He teaches that this is a contract between the states. And it only makes sense that within a contract that you start applying compliance and ensuring that those who are executing the contract are complying with the standards that you've placed in that, and not taking upon themselves the ability to do whatever they want to do. So obviously the only solution that we have is moving into a convention. If you really want to peel back, if you want to save this nation from going into a capitulation of debt and powers and tyranny and so forth, the only process that we have available to us that's constitutional. And I say this because if you read the Federalist Papers, if you read the ratification debates, clearly the states had all the power, and it doesn't even have to be specified. All powers were reserved to the states. If the states decide to say, you know what, we're going to hold this audit and we're going to go line by line through everything that you're doing and saying, you know what, we don't see that enumerated in the Constitution, and we're not going to let you do that. Now, I am highly recommending that this coalition or these delegates, as they meet from their own states, because there's no reason why this can't be done online, as they meet and interface with one another, they start looking at some of the good things that the federal government is doing and saying, do we want to continue doing that? Do we still need a Department of Transportation? Yeah. maybe we don't need the federal government to do it. Maybe we can create a new federal polity that's of domestic affairs or what have you. The republic has all sorts of avenues, and I get into that into my third book, Reclaiming the Republic. Let me go into these posts though, because a lot of people want to know, well, how can I do something? How can I get involved and get active? Well, Doug with his Constitutional Association, which meets on the first Saturday of every month, and if you go to his websites, you can find out where and who's speaking and so forth. If you go to Political Pistachio, you can find out how to start interfacing with these posts and how can you start getting some assistance. What you need to do is identify all of your local representatives, your mayors, your city councilmen, your utility boards, people who are elected and are appointed, all people who raise their arm to the square and take the oath that they will defend and protect the Constitution, because all oaths start off with that, and hold them accountable to that. And in my second book, The Strategy to Convene We the People, The Strategy to Convene a Convention for Public Review, at the very back end, I have appendixes. One is a statement of fact. Appendix B is a list of all the founding documents that clearly point out these powers are held within the states, from the Federalist Papers to the ratification debates and other articles, such as the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions of 1798. But the third appendix, Appendix C, are actual petitions that you would get your local representatives and even your state legislatures to start signing. And what you want to do is start pressuring your state legislatures to start chairing the discussion, start getting it out there so that people can start discussing in the floor of the legislatures of all these different states. And oh, guess what? Here's the secret. 34 states are already so fed up that they've already petitioned for a convention to amend an Article 5 convention. Now, if these states actually had the epiphany or got this idea that I've presented and said, you know what, we don't need to amend the Constitution. We can kind of undo all the unconstitutional stuff that isn't serving us and realign some of these things that we believe really can serve us and move the constitutional republic into the 21st century. If anybody's familiar with Madison's writings, he didn't believe that the constitutional republic would survive 100 years, let alone 50, because the vast differences between the needs of the states and understanding republicanism and the republic. It's just amazing that we've survived this long, and in some ways we've only survived this long because of the machinations of very nefarious men. So in these posts, getting back to that, how do you do this? In these posts, you can start meeting and coalescing with people that are like-minded. You can connect with people via the Oath Keepers organization, Tea Party, the John Birch Society, and you can actually start going out and recruiting other like-minded people that have a reverence towards the Constitution and individual liberties. A lot of those types of places that you can solicit would be the church parking lots in your local community. I'd highly recommend you talk to the way leader, the priest, the minister, or whoever is leading the Christian organizations and the churches in your local community. But tell them, hey, we're going to be putting these flyers out, because one of the things that the Post can do is start feeding people so that they can start learning the content of, like what Doug teaches in his constitutional class. They can learn the content of that class and start understanding the Constitution and start learning and understanding where the state really does have the power and the ability to take control over all things that aren't enumerated in the Constitution as it was designed.